Working on live stream, and yeah, there should be something hopefully that pops up on my stream here. But yeah, now what's interesting is anybody right now, the two newest podcasts that I saw in mainstream media was Michelle Obama's and
Oh,
Gavin
she's
Newsom.
got one.
Yeah, she's got one with her brother, I believe. And I was looking at that one and I was like, oh boy, okay. She's the first lady. She should have a podcast. And then,
Well, her brother used to listen to us late at night when he was
yes,
recruiting. Is it
yes,
the? Yeah,
yes,
you know how I know that? Our producer told us.
yeah.
Oh,
And
our producer ran into him at Pac 10 or Pac 12 day back in the day.
mhm.
He said, "Oh, so you know JT and Looney, Michelle Obama's brother."
Yeah, that's for sure. There's some people piling in right now, so give it a second here to warm up. We'll give it a second to warm up here for a little bit.
Oh, I feel like those fitness influencers on Instagram waiting for people to come on in so they can talk about fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting when you do go live. When you do go live on YouTube, if you're one of the people that follow along, and again, what's great about what I like about this is we turn this into our podcast. But while we're doing this, we get a couple other people that hopefully will jump into the JT and Looney podcast. So one second here, but yeah, as I was getting to Newsom, Gavin Newsom having his own podcast, which I'm fine with. But when you have Charlie Kirk on and Steve Bannon, it's clear that you're trying to grow your podcast base when you should be really trying to build homes off the fire and alleviate traffic issues and not trying to expand your name to the other side of the aisle to get more subscriptions and I think there's times when you got to do your first job. Like Joe Rogan, his first job used to be UFC, and then the podcast started. Now the podcast is so massive that UFC is the second job, and he does both equally well.
Well, he's got an amazing story because he had a TV series, and when he had a TV series, his agent just wanted him to concentrate on the TV series, and he was concentrating. He decided he wanted to do stand-up comedy. His agent says, "What are you doing?" Then he had success at stand-up comedy, but he wanted to do UFC. He loved mixed martial arts and working out, and this sport that was captivating the world. And his stand-up comic agent said, "What are you doing?" And so then he gets the UFC job, and he starts doing a podcast out of his garage. And his agent says, "What are you doing?" And so I admire that you know what he's done with his life? Anything he wanted and turned it into an industry. And Gavin Newsom's one of the, as you know, from your days in the Bay Area, is one of the great brains in politics, a little slick, obviously image-wise. That I don't know if that'll work for him. We need talented people, both liberal and conservative, like him in politics. But I'm worried about his likability, and I think maybe he's expanding a media empire because conservatives have really. It used to be news media, and media used to be dominated by liberals, and it's not anymore. So I think he wants to build his own liberal piece of the pie. Either A, doing that with a media thing, or some kind of rollout to run for president.
Yeah, it's obviously a rollout to run for president. Clearly, it's starting.
I don't know if it's that.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be because if you're going to do,
well, it's one of those two things I mentioned. Because he's got a business mind.
But I believe that if you're a politician and doing a podcast, you should be a retired politician. That's my theory. If you're going to be a politician,
well, it shouldn't be if you've got another big job like governor of California, you make a good point.
Like if Cuomo, who wants to run for mayor of New York now, if he wants to run for mayor and have a podcast leading up to that, and then he wins and stops, I'm okay. But once you win the election here, but we haven't talked politics.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree. And there's a lot of talented politicians, both liberal and conservative. And I loved. I can't mention this enough. And people always talk about how we don't always agree politically and we get along fine. That's how we grew up. You know why that is? Because what we have in common is our Catholicism. Because a lot of what's Catholic is neither liberal nor conservative. And we try to fall on the side of what's decent. And politics is lacking a lot of decent. If you disagree with someone, they're not a bad person. You just disagree with them on how to spend tax dollars. I want to build bike paths. You want to build aircraft carriers. Let's have a beer.
Yeah. And speaking of Speaking of Catholicism, I started Lent off
Mhm.
not eating meat, and I just
Oh,
finished
great.
a burrito bowl. So with a meat burrito bowl, so that went out pretty quick. I was
Uh,
good. I,
did you? It's because if you forgot.
no, I was in Florida on a golf trip with my son that I want to get into, which
Mhm.
was great. And my son's in the chat now, so maybe he can retweet this and put this out
Okay.
on all of our platforms so more people can see it, such as Instagram and all of that. But I just got back from a trip where I was with my youngest son, and we went golfing to Florida, and there was a lot of beer, a lot of quick food at the turn. After nine
Well,
holes, it's a turn.
there's a shock.
A lot of throwing food in your mouth in the middle of, in between holes. So if you were trying to
Mhm.
be strict going into Lent, if you go on a 4-day golf trip with your buddies, which involved golf, food, shower, bars, Ubers at 1 in the morning, golf again. That was it. I think we lost Looney. Tom, did we lose you already? Oh, I hope we didn't lose you. You were perfect. You were perfect. Oh, no. Well, I don't know why he is not there. So I don't want to do another stream. So let's see if we can get him back up here again. We are still in the process, as my son who's here would say. Um, yeah, we lost you. Any reason why?
I'm here. I can see you.
Okay, great. I can't see you. I can't hear you at all either.
Okay, I'll hang up and we'll try to troubleshoot.
Yeah, try to troubleshoot this. You know, we got a lot of good people helping us on all these platforms, YouTube and all this. It's just a pain in the ass with Wi-Fi, getting everything up and running, doing all this. I mean, every freaking night or every time we try to do this for years, it's a pain in the ass because, nothing ever is easy. So as my son gives me 4 fire emojis, maybe he can figure out why Looney has disappeared, and maybe he can click on again. And if he clicks on again, maybe we can try this again and go in that road. So let me see if I got him again. There he is. Let's see. Maybe he has to click on again. There it is. Snoop Loon. Let's see. I have him in there again.
Let me see.
I see you now. Do you hear us?
Yeah,
Good.
I do.
Yeah, I don't know what you touched, so don't touch anything. If you
Oh, I didn't.
I know you did, probably. Don't touch anything.
I didn't touch it. But what now I know with what happens if I drop out, just to leave and then come back and now. But this is where we were. You were talking about your great Florida trip, showering, drinking,
Yeah. So let's start the podcast like they do in the real podcast world. And
Okay.
I have a glass of Pinot Noir tonight because
Oh,
I had a very
nice.
long day, so I'm having a nice glass of Pinot Noir. Normally it's
I'd love
covered.
to hear about your very long day. Oh, I had to watch basketball games and host 2 radio shows.
No,
Ooh.
I had to listen to this. You'll get and some of the people in the chat know this. I did a remote, and I don't want to say I despise remotes because you and I have done 100 together. At least we
Right.
did 70 for boxing or 60.
Right.
And I did one today at the Mountain West basketball opening round, and it was at the Thomas and Mack where we've seen great fights and shows. They put me in the concourse next to a bar. It went into the Mount Rushmores as loudest remotes I've ever done. I couldn't hear the guest, couldn't hear the calls. People were screaming with every basket, and I'm like, oh my God. That's why I tell everybody why it's more important to do radio in a radio studio, perfectly engineered, than out on the road, unless that's where the money is.
Well, because you can hear yourself turned up really loud in the headphones, which is the best part. And you can hear the callers and hear yourself think. Yeah, radio remotes are overrated. But anytime there was a holiday, if you go back in the hot tub time machine and Big Weenie, WNY, had a remote broadcast from Elmira Chrysler Plymouth. My mother would drop me off there for the 3 hours of the broadcast, come back and get me 3 hours later, and I would watch the disc jockey talk between records and do the weather and sports, so radio remotes turns young broadcasters or young future broadcasters onto the medium. So you were doing some public relations work there for future broadcasters if radio is around in 20 years.
In 3, 2, and 1, welcome to the JT and Looney podcast. We are back. We haven't been here together for a while since I last saw you. You were in Mexico. I was
Right.
in Florida. So we just came off well, mine was like a mini sports vacation. You had a real vacation in Mexico.
Oh, it was incredible. Guanajuato. I went to it's a tourist trap for Mexicans. I was the only white guy there. It was amazing. No one spoke English, which is okay with me. Puedo hablar español perfectamente. And it was, for people who like to save a buck, and that's not me. That's not how I live my life. But 45 pesos for a Corona, that's $2.19. If I wanted to work out for one day at the gym, which I did several times, it was 45 pesos. And it was like New Orleans. It's a city like New Orleans. I sent you the pictures. The architecture is the same, built long before New Orleans, 1600s, and it was incredible. And it was like New Orleans without the puking and the violence. Just a lot of fun.
Well, that was my follow up question. Is it safe? Because there's two ways of looking at Mexico recently. And I'm talking about
By the way,
the last.
never an uncomfortable moment. No police, no people with machine guns. No.
Well, how come when I see the movie Sicario and I watch all the movies like Lioness, as soon as the SUVs come over the border, it could be the Tijuana border, it could be through
Right.
Texas, as the Suburbans come over the border in these movies, they are firing and shooting everybody, and they're going into ditches and jumping out looking for cover and trying to give everyone cover as the cartel is coming at them. How is Mexico safer than ever?
Oh, some of the safest cities in the world, and because it's got 32 states, it's an enormous country, so you can't judge it by a movie. That's why it's an incredible, large country full of culture, and it's preserved its culture even though it's next to the big enchilada of the United States, as Canada has, and just got incredible, safe, wonderful cities where you'll rarely see a police officer, and you'll never see army coming down the street with machine guns or anything. There's a lot of in the 32 states. There's a lot of cities in those 32 states where it's just relaxed.
All right, let's get it out on the water. What's the real? Because I'm going on a Mexican cruise, a Mexico
Okay.
cruise on the Norwegian Bliss in about 8 or 9 days, which I'll get to.
What's the departing city and where you're going?
We're leaving out of the port of LA. We're
Hmm.
going to Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, Puerto Vallarta. It's a
Okay.
Raiders cruise, so get this. There's 400 people involved with the Raiders on the cruise. Couple staff, maybe 20, 15 alumni, some of your favorite Raider alumni. Me, who's emceeing it, I got to work 2 hours a day, 5 of the 7 days. And it's going to be incredible because the Norwegian Bliss holds over 4,000 people. So 10% of the boat will be the Raider Nation. The other 90% of the boat will be clearly the staff and other people there. So get this, a JT fun fact. I've never been on a cruise.
Oh, wow.
I've been to the beaches of Australia. I've
You've
been
been all
all throughout Europe, Italy, Paris, London. I've never been on a cruise in my life because I wasn't a cruise guy. But now I think I picked the one that I'm going to like. So for anybody in the chat or anybody listening to the podcast, whenever you are, if you want to leave a comment and give me maybe your top 3 cruise do's and don'ts, because I called my doctor yesterday. He sent me the patch. I'm a tough guy. I've never been seasick, but I got the patch just in case something crazy happens. We got a bunch of other stuff we're bringing there, but anybody got a recommendation on a cruise? Let it fly.
Wow. And I think that I come from a long line of Irish fishermen or something, because whether it's a canoe or the Queen Mary and everything in between, a cruise ship, gosh, any boat. I take a look at a boat. I want to see, is it a Johnson? Is it an Everroot? How many horsepowers is it? 45? Is it an inboard, outboard? In Penn Yan, New York, is where they make a lot of boats in upstate New York, where they did for a long time. And anything about a boat, I'm all about a boat. I think I've only been on 3 cruises. And for me, it's all about the boat. You can't, for me, if I want to experience a country, you can't really I want to live Rome. I don't want to stop by, and or it's too much of a tease.
You
I
nailed
just
it.
love the boat experience.
Yeah, you nailed that for me. I'd rather be on the land doing everything than being on the water. What's interesting about this is such a big time boat. It's one of the premier cruise liners in the
Mm.
world. Is that they have the main dining halls and the main areas where you eat, but they have 17 other restaurants that you can go to, from the sushi spot to the smoked barbecue to the Italian to the steakhouse. You get your own reservation and do that. So we're kind of overwhelmed because we know we're going to be doing some big dinners with a lot of people that I'm going to
And
be
you'll have a
involved
good
with.
time at those dinners because the dinners are amazing, the food's amazing. And I didn't go to the restaurants because one of the cruises we met the middleweight champions, some Mikey Garcia's relatives. So they said they were from Oxnard when we first sat down, and then I said, well, I mentioned something about boxing, and then we were friends, and then we wanted to have dinner with them every night because we really hit it off. And so, there's a formal night where everyone gets
Yeah.
dressed up in a suit and tie. It's just it's really a lot of fun, and I know the way you are. You get to go to the rodeo. You wear your cowboy hat. You'll dress up in your suit on the dress up night. And you'll have a great time.
All right, as we get into sports, I want to dedicate the podcast to the memory. I wouldn't call him a friend, more of an acquaintance, but a guy I've interviewed at least 20 times, and that's a big number for me. He passed away today. This is John Feinstein, the great author, who died today at 69. This is one of the books. I have 6 of his books behind me. This is The Open that he wrote about, the U.S. Open at Bethpage, where I grew up. He also wrote one of the greatest books I've ever read, A Good Walk Spoiled, another golf book. He was his last column was yesterday on Tom Izzo for the tournament. So John Feinstein from the Sports Reporters that you remember, he went to some big fights. He was at big boxing fights throughout the decades. He wrote for the Washington Post, and as I was hosting my local show today, I got an alert with like 2 minutes to go, and I couldn't do it justice. So John Feinstein, rest in peace, on the Mount Rushmore of sports authors of all time because of the bestsellers and the impact that he had.
Now, did he write a book on Barry Bonds?
I don't think he wrote a book on Bonds. I don't have his library. Maybe someone wants to put in the chat maybe some of his top biggest books of all
I don't want to
time.
get that wrong. Okay.
But he wrote a lot of big books about basketball, college basketball, from Bobby Knight to golf, and he was just an institution. And you remember him on the Sports Reporters with Mike Lupica, Bob Ryan, when he was there, and he was always a guest when there was breaking news on something global that happened big in sports. But I wanted to get that in because I would never forget that. But I wanted to get it into the show. Now, all week I came back. I had a great week because I came back from my trip Sunday night. Little airport etiquette I want to get out of the way. I flew a new,
I know that always gets.
I flew a new airline, which an airline that you've never flown, Breeze.
Oh no.
Airline. They flew nonstop from Las Vegas to Jacksonville. Brand new plane. Problem is they only fly Wednesdays and Saturdays. So that is a problem. Oh my God, this is great for the podcast. Look at this. Reggie Jackson's calling. This is live. Tom, look at this. Listen to this. Listen. Hold on. Hello, Reggie.
What time are you on the air?
I'm not on air tonight. I'm doing a podcast from home. I'm just home.
Okay, good. Where is the event tomorrow?
The event tomorrow night is from Max Crosby at Allegiant Stadium at 6 p.m.
Okay. Oh, is it start at 6 p.m.?
It starts at 7, and
Okay.
it'll go to like 9:30.
Okay, good.
You
Yeah,
think-
I will be there with 2 other people.
Okay? I'll let them know.
Yes, please let them know. And looking for a place to stay. I'm trying to call a hotel over there. Have you ever seen the people that attend first of all, do you have a few minutes to listen?
I don't actually. I'm in the middle of a podcast, but I can call you back in a little bit.
Do it.
I'll do that. Thanks, Reggie. Okay. I mean, come on.
we got to end the podcast right there.
I mean, I think I should end the podcast and talk to Reggie Jackson for 20 minutes. My boyhood idol. Wow, that's pretty heavy. So,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
I'm also just thinking for you to get that call on your phone.
Well,
just because of the Yankees and your devotion to the Yankees. How cool is that? Wow.
yes, that is really
And
cool.
calling JT for a hookup in Vegas, like everyone
Yes,
else.
yeah. JT, could you help? Well, I was this close to saying, "Stay at my house, Reg." Stay here. I'll put up an air mattress here, and you can stay there. So, what were we talking about? Oh, I flew Breeze Airline, which
uh,
was really cool, but they only fly Wednesday and Saturday, like Allegiant Airlines. Some of these low cost carriers
mhm.
only fly like one day there and one day back. We grew up in an era where there was 4 or 5 flights a day from every city. So that was weird. Then I flew back and I had to make a connector in Atlanta. And it was the fault of the airline that we were running late to Atlanta. And they were going to close the doors, Tom, knowing that everybody on the flight that was connecting, there was some elderly people who needed wheelchairs. They closed the door on them and they couldn't wait for them, even though there was weather delays. And I thought that was so upsetting to me that my son and my wife were able to move quickly through the airport and we made the connection as the doors were closing at 11 at night. If not, we would have had to get a hotel room in Atlanta. So don't you think that the airline should wait for everybody when they're on the ground and they're about to connect?
Yeah, public relations wise, they should, and some of them do, and some of them even keep track of who and where you are in the airport. They've done it for me, and sometimes they haven't, and it's upsetting when they don't. When they know someone's coming, they know someone's landing, they have all the technology, and and they're going to get, it's a plane. It'll get where it's going really quickly because of how fast it goes. Just wait for people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, what do you think about Southwest Airlines getting rid of their free bags and their free seating where you can sit? I mean, come on, dude. I mean, the fact that you get 2 bags, I bring my golf clubs and I bring a big suitcase and it's free. Are you okay with this change? You and I live out west. We fly Southwest often.
You're right. In Southwest, that's a great loyal base that they've that stayed with them after a lot of snafus over the last couple of years with their antiquated computer system. And, they got to be careful because they built up a lot of goodwill, and that's hard to ruin. And even though all the computer snafus they've had, they still got some goodwill and some loyal customers. And there's too much trickeration in the airlines industry in general. When you want to fly, one quick secret I found out though. So when I flew to Mexico, it's one of those things where you get a great deal, but then they're going to charge you for your seat and your bag. So I said no bags, and then we took our bags on because they're not standing there. I've noticed that. Spirit a couple of times I took because I had to do something quick and it was cheap for a funeral. And I did take a carry on, but they didn't say, "Hey, you didn't pay for the carry on." So that's a little, bring a carry on, and they're probably not going to give you a hard time.
My gut feeling is Southwest is making a massive mistake. They have to do this for economic purposes. Look, having an assigned seat doesn't bother me. I'll sit in the back of the plane, I'll sit in the front of the plane, I'll pay for an
Right.
upgrade. But the great thing about Southwest is I have a Southwest credit card and you get some frequent flyer miles and then you get an A 1 through 15. You get the board early, but a new trick's happening in all the airline industry. A lot of people are lying now, from the elderly to those who are not injured, saying that they'd like to pre-board. Oh, my hip's bothering me. I just had a knee replacement. It used to be maybe 4 or 5 people would pre-board. Now it's getting up to 20 to 30
Right.
pre-board before the kids get on and the toddlers with the strollers.
And they worry. What I think they worry about is asking people to prove it because you can really put yourself in an embarrassing situation if you ask someone to prove their disability or their handicap, and then they prove it, and so you don't want that public relations mess. So they're in a spot.
All right, let's get into the breaking news of NFL free agency. I think that's why most people are listening to us as we get back to sports. Josh Allen signed the largest football contract ever. That means of all time, from anybody dating back to leather helmets who have ever carried, tackled, or threw a football. How excited are for you? That's kind of your dirt. You grew up not too far from there. I think he is a worthy and great player to hold that mantle for however long he'll hold it.
There are currently two players in the NFL that make me feel like a child. Uh, in the just Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. It's like when you're watching a Pop Warner game and there's that one early bloomer, and then there's 21 other midgets on the field, and it's a lot. And those two can just do what they want sometimes and take over games. Josh Allen, and what's really funny too is when he gets into the secondary, Lamar Jackson will run by you. Josh Allen will run over you. Or, defensive backs don't want to break a nail. They just let him run, or they make a cursory attempt to tackle him. He's he's my Mount Rushmore of two favorite players right now. They make me feel like children. You have a favorite when you're a kid, you have favorite candy bar, favorite ice cream, favorite athletes, favorite football players. And right now, Josh Allen makes me feel like a child. So good for him.
And I like the fact that it gives Buffalo, I mean, look at the 49ers. Their entire roster has been dismantled, literally dismantled. And they haven't even paid Brock Purdy yet. They're saying goodbye to Deebo Samuel, Usyk, the great fullback. They still have Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, who signed that.
They were so much fun to watch at full strength. They were so much fun.
Yeah, and again, they got a problem now because they paid everybody all this money. And I give them credit. They took 2 shots at the Super Bowl. In a 4-year period, they went to the Super Bowl twice. They had the lead in the fourth quarter. The lead in the fourth quarter in both those Super Bowls and lost. And now that they have to reset, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think every team, like Philadelphia, is in that window now too, where Philadelphia is resetting, Tom. And I think Philadelphia is going to be the type of team that's going to have to start to lose players. Philadelphia is going to lose a player here or there, but they're going to have this window of opportunity for a while. And we lost Looney again. So I know this is not Tom's fault, but we're having a tough time following him. So I don't know if it's his settings there. He's popping up again. So let's see. And I think we have him back again. Tom, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
So what do you think about...
in the future, when you lose me, just ad lib for a couple of seconds and I'll come back.
That's good radio 101.
No tantrum.
Hey, by the way, give me a little bit of credit from the tantrums that I used to throw. It used to be, listen to this real quickly. It used to be when I was on the air overnights and if I was on the road in San Antonio or Detroit and they didn't get me on in time or the wires weren't connected, I'd be really panicking. Now I don't give a shit. I'm just like, okay, tell me when I'm on. It's not my fault. But we were getting to the fact that Josh Allen is the highest paid guy. And some of the Niners and now the Eagles and Kansas City has lost a couple of players. That's why they have a salary cap. Because if they didn't, they could do what's happening over your shoulder in Hollywood, where the Dodgers can defer all the money that they're supposed to give to Ohtani, and they can sign the best players and never worry about going over the luxury tax or anything. So I think the NFL at least puts pressure on their teams to have certain windows of opportunity to have a rookie quarterback and then load up, or have a veteran quarterback and have to let go of some players.
One of the greatest things about the NFL is its unpredictability anyway. The San Francisco 49ers didn't lose players and had a down year. So you can lose players and have a down year. You can lose players and make the playoffs after, like the Minnesota Vikings. No one thought the Vikings would do last year with Sam Darnold what they did. You have surprise teams that are great, like the Vikings were, and you have surprise teams that are bad, like the 49ers were, without losing players or sometimes losing them to injury, etc. That's one thing that's great about the NFL is that nearly 500, nearly half of the teams that make it into the playoffs one year don't make it into the next, and that's what makes it so much fun. Is your team? It leaves every fan base with the idea that they may have a chance based on that statistic.
I need some advice from you. You've given me great advice in life. The new quarterback who I work for is Geno Smith. And we, as in you and I, have covered Geno's career. I was not very impressed with Geno's career until recently. And I'm honest about that. When Geno came into the league and he flamed out with the Jets, because the Jets are the Jets, they're still as bad as when Geno was drafted there. Remember that incident? He got punched in the jaw by a teammate. Really big story. He played for the Chargers. Get this, and Big D, one of my buddies, gave me the stat. There were 5 seasons where he played 5 or less games. Let that sink in. 5 seasons of his career, and he's still a pretty young guy, where he didn't even play as a backup. So he was the second string quarterback and didn't even play. So he didn't get hit. He didn't get concussed. He didn't play. So that should freshen him up. And then do you know in the last 3 seasons, Geno's won more games than Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford. So now I look at Geno differently and I go, he's thrown for 4,000 yards, 70% completion percentage, and he wanted to play with Pete Carroll, and he actually turned down Seattle that gave him a fair offer and said no, he wanted to play for Las Vegas. So I'm hoping Geno made the right decision, and I hope he surprises me and continues to play at a Pro Bowl level.
And there's been times, uncountable times over the years in the NFL where somebody in their 30s who's not that hurt, Rich Gannon, one of them, they end up becoming NFL MVPs, Kurt Warner, and these aren't throwout statistics. There's lots of guys over the years that all of a sudden see the game with great clarity. It slows down for them in their 30s. Their brain matures, and if they're not too banged up from the earlier years in the NFL or too damaged psychologically by playing for the Jets or the Browns, they get a chance to bounce back and improve themselves, and they improve under the expert tutelage of great quarterbacks or great coaches. And there's no reason to think that he can't. And I love my running quarterbacks. I love when he takes off.
So the other team that I think really benefited from Geno leaving, out of all due respect, is Sam Darnold's going to Seattle. Sam Darnold was 14-3. You covered him on Benny and the Penny every week. He played at an MVP level. He didn't win the MVP because it was Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, and the winner, Josh Allen. But he was there. He was at NFL honors sitting in the front row. That guy had a hell of a year. And he's not getting 50, 55 million. He's in the 30s. I'm telling you, I think Seattle got a hell of a player on a rebirth in his career for a really good price. But they lost DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. They don't have Marshawn Lynch. They don't have the Legion of Boom. The team isn't as good as Minnesota, but I'm really high on
Do
Sam
they have
Darnold.
the right coach? But do they have the right coach and the right offensive coordinator like he had in Minnesota? Sometimes it's all the luck of that draw as well.
Well, how about the coach in Vegas, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly? How about that? I mean, I think Geno looked around and said, not only do I get Pete Carroll, I have Chip Kelly, and then upstairs in that corner office that looks over the field, Tom Brady, the co-owner, the minority owner of the Raiders, who, once the season starts, Brady can't do it because he's a broadcaster for Fox. But during the offseason, he could look at film every day with Geno and get Geno up to speed for the Raiders.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and you got some outstanding wide receivers, including the number one, which is your tight end. And I look forward to it. You got to get yourself a linebacker, right? You got to go to that draft or at least free agencies and get yourself a linebacker. How's your offensive line looking?
Offensive line's not bad. They'll get another one in the draft pick. They got 3 or 4 good offensive linemen. I'll throw it back to you. You're getting Devontae Adams in L.A., and he lives, a quick dirty secret, he lives in Vegas and is not selling his house. So he will be commuting. But Devontae was very dramatic with Aaron Rodgers, who still, as we record this, we're live streaming on YouTube, but we're also on the podcast. Devontae's coming to L.A. with Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, and they said goodbye to Cooper Kupp. You're in L.A. with KABC. That's got to be a hell of a story. He had one of the greatest seasons ever, including Jerry Rice's best season. Wow.
Yeah, and Cooper, someone's going to land an incredible wide receiver. Captain Obvious here to tell you that. I don't know why they would get rid of him. That's one thing that drives people crazy about the NFL, even though the NFL does seem to be doing a lot more right than it does wrong, is with the. You blame your friend Bill Walsh for this, and that would be getting rid of someone maybe a year or two before they take a nosedive, and I don't know who Cooper Kupp might have more than a year or two left.
Yeah, you're right about that because he's taken such a beating. I watched Hunter Renfrow in Vegas play a couple of years, get concussed, and he's out of the league. And you're like, wait a second, the guy had over 100 receptions. Cooper Kupp had one of the great years, but small guys get beat up in the NFL. And that's very interesting to me. So other than that, in NFL free agency, the last topic, which is really unique, is Aaron Rodgers is not wanted by anybody. And I'm still an Aaron Rodgers guy. I think he's got a lot left. He's in Australia thinking about it. Do you believe this guy still has the balls? There's only 2 teams left, the Giants in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh's won more Super Bowls than any franchise ever, and he's making them both wait. He's actually telling them both he'll get back to them. What is up with the ego still of Aaron Rodgers?
Well, first of all, it takes the ego thing's important in order to think that you can play Division I football. I think that you can be a quarterback in the NFL. That never bothers me. It's a requirement of a quarterback to have one. It's his oddness, and leaders are odd, but he has seemed to. There's something about him, and I think it's just he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't have. We both have friends that'll tell us, and other halves, we got a booger on our nose. He doesn't have anybody that does that.
Yeah, he doesn't. And there's a couple of people in sports that are like that. And the really big topic I wanted to get to in this podcast is Stephen A. versus LeBron James. Right in your backyard. I text with Stephen A. probably 2 or 3 times a week. So Stephen A. and I are close from back in the day. Reports are, and I can't confirm this because he hasn't put it in a text to me, but reports are that he signed a $100 million deal. I want to take this time on this platform to tell you this. You know the backstory. We worked at a network back in the day that did not want him. They hired him. They hired him and had him. And they replaced him for guys by the name of Zach and Jack. Okay? Now, in the history of recorded audio, from Marconi all the way to Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan with a massive podcast. No one at any point in time said, I don't want Stephen A. on my network. I'm going to get rid of him for a guy named Zach and Jack. We saw that, and now Stephen A. is signing for $100 million reportedly. He's going to have his own production company. He's obviously leaking into politics. Good idea or a bad idea, that's for other people. But he's at a game, and LeBron James in Los Angeles, right in your backyard, comes up to him and says, get my son's name out of your mouth. And Stephen A. stood toe-to-toe with him. There were no fisticuffs. But do you think it was out of bounds for the dad, LeBron James, to do that, even though he facilitated his young son, who I think is talented enough, but most people didn't think he was to make it to the NBA?
Well, we're both very loyal people that would stick up for our friends and our family. So I don't fault either one of them. One of them has a job to give opinions about sports. The other one, is a dad who's also working with his son and was probably oversensitive about it. And I've heard people point out the hypocrisy where LeBron didn't want his mom sticking up for him one time when he was a rookie and said, Mom, sit your ass down. You don't need mommy sticking up for me. That's not a good look. But, that's because now we can all do hypocritical things, especially he did that with his heart, sticking up for his son. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. His son's on the team. And it doesn't bother me that Stephen A. Smith stuck up for his job. I know it does sound like I'm riding the fence here, but I have great admiration for both guys and completely understand where both of them are coming from.
Well, let me throw this at you because I think there's more to this topic that we should dive into.
Okay.
We know people who are nationally syndicated, like we were in LA, who choose not to go to games. 2 of the biggest sports talk radio hosts of all time don't go to any games, which means they go to 0 out of 82 or 1 out of 82 home or on the road, 41 games. And they live there, and the media would love them to come. The owners would love them to come. The GMs and the coaches would love them to sit courtside. And they choose not to go. And they'll go on their radio or television shows and talk shit about people, but they don't go. Stephen A. has made it clear. He's going to go to Madison Square Garden and buy his seat in the front row. That's not a comp. He's going to go to LA and buy his seat at Staples Center right there. So if you want to talk to him and he's going to talk shit about you, he's going to be right there. So I give him a lot of respect for that. And I don't think the media covered that part of the story a lot because we get to see the people that talk and trash talk but don't go. Skip Bayless was the best example other people used, is that Skip was on Fox Sports 1 in LA brutalizing LeBron and talking about this as Shannon Sharp, who was going to the games. Remember, when Shannon was with Skip, he was sitting courtside and hanging there, and even Shannon got into it with other teams, players, and all that. So if you're going to talk the talk, shouldn't you have to walk the walk and show up to some of these games?
always, because you have to, you have to be there to be reminded that they're not cartoons. They're human beings, and you have to face the fire when that happens. If you remember, before I did this, I wrote a radio and television column in LA. And sometimes when people get really upset about something I wrote, I would call them. I thought that was my responsibility as a human being to connect, find out what they didn't like that I wrote. And people used to really respect that. But it was also for me, because it's so much, it's just as easy. You could write something or say something positive than say something negative, because we're all deeply flawed.
All right, let's get him up here again. It'll take a moment as we do this. Yeah, we were talking about how everybody is deeply flawed. And as we hit on that, there are a lot of deeply flawed people. You were writing a column and you were talking directly about people in the media. Were you bumping into them at Van Gogh's ear in nightclubs or in restaurants?
Yeah. Matter of fact, sometimes we would have LA Radio, LAradio.com would have their parties at Van Gogh's ear. And in addition to owning that restaurant, I was a columnist that wrote those columns, and I would always, I enjoyed it because I have this great passion for radio in general, and most of the column was about radio. But I was happy to face the fire and talk to people that I had written negative things about, etc. And it always worked out just fine for me because I'm a people lover. And Stephen A. Smith. The first time I saw Stephen A. Smith, the first time he was hired nationally, is when Fox Sports Net wanted to take on ESPN. Remember?
Yeah.
And they hired Keith Olbermann and Chris Myers and a lot of big shots from ESPN to go up against ESPN. And one of the guys they used to talk about the NBA was Stephen A. Smith. And when I first saw him, it's when I had the Looney and Dave show back in the day in LA.
Great show.
I said, we got to get that guy on. We got it, because Stephen A. Smith, when we worked with him, as I would tell him, I never heard anybody. I always wanted to put sentences together like that with perfect grammar and the syntax and the vocabulary. And his thoughts were so clear from beginning to middle to end. And as a lover of spoken word, I always thought he's a Mount Rushmore spoken word artist, and nothing that he accomplishes surprises me. I saw it coming.
Well, the last thing on the Stephen A. versus LeBron is, I mean this, we've met a lot of people in our lives, and we have a lot more friends than we have of acquaintances. Stephen A. is the classic example of a guy, you don't know him from the air. What he says on the air is him. It's not an act. That's who he is. He'll raise his voice and he'll get loud and, crack some things, but who he is who he is. I was just with John Gruden at the Super Bowl for a couple of days, and John Gruden has made the move to Barstool. And when he did that, I was like, ooh, I don't know about that, Coach. I didn't tell him this, but I'm like, Coach Gruden, you're going to go to Barstool? And I respect Barstool and what they've been able to do. It's been incredible. The path of that company has been massive. But I didn't know if it would work for Coach Gruden because I wanted to see him get back in the league. Now, 4 out of the 5 videos that I look at the most every day are John Gruden opening up boxes in a studio, interviewing players, walking the streets of New Orleans at the Super Bowl. And John Gruden, like Stephen A., they're the same guys that I've had dinner with and hung out with on TV. There's no phoniness to either one of those guys, and they're both blowing up.
And one thing that I think would surprise people about Stephen A. and would surprise people about you is the quiet side. When you're between, when there's commercials are on or some people are coming in the room, you're not raising your voice at producers or editors or your co-workers and friends. And you're a quiet man at home named John. Stephen A. Smith is a quiet man at home named Steve. And that would probably surprise people, both of those fun facts.
Well, it's interesting, with LeBron, the reason I've had a little bit of sympathy on this issue with Stephen A. is he's protecting his son. I have 2 sons, and if someone was talking shit...
The sympathy for LeBron, you mean?
Yeah, so if someone was talking trash about my sons, either one of them...
good luck.
If I was able to bump into the guy at a Raider game or this or that, I'd go right up to him. I'd at least have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a fight. Everybody thinks you got to fight. You got to throw punches. No. What you have to do, and what's really the the growth of Twitter and what's happened with social media, there are so many people that are anonymous. Like I'm looking at a chat, what I do every day in YouTube, and I know a lot of the people. Some of them are my friends. Some are new people that I'm getting to know, but they're pretty good people. Everyone's a nice person. But anonymously, people can say some bad stuff if they're anonymous. LeBron James went right up to Stephen A. And I don't knock him for that. And he said what he did, but he could have did it in the bowels of the stadium. He could have said, hey, do me a favor. After the game, meet me outside the locker room or in the training room. I want to talk to you. He didn't do that, and I think LeBron was playing to the crowd. I think LeBron, like Kevin Durant, pay attention to a lot of media. They listen to Stephen A. They watch him. How do you think this all happens? Because LeBron watches Stephen A. every day and hears about it. So it got a little bit clunky for me. And I think they both had reasons to defend themselves, but I'm pro Stephen A. over LeBron.
Well, LeBron might agree with you on that maybe the bowels of the stadium, but there's also called seizing the moment, and which I talked to Gloria Allred about back in the day.
Is that the lady in red?
Yes, the lady in red. When I asked her a legal question one time at a talkers convention, and I said, "I hope you're not annoyed. I'm asking you a legal question." She said, "No, you're seizing the moment," and I think LeBron probably didn't think it through the way you're I don't think there's a conspiracy. There's no grassy knoll. Yeah, he could have done all that, probably looking back, but that's probably wasn't his thought process. He seized the moment, saw him, said it, but I don't know if he planned it out. And
yeah, I don't know if it's a plan out type of thing, as we say again. I don't think it's a plan out type of thing, but it's how you handle yourself in the public persona. When you're in the public persona, how are you going to handle yourself overall? You're going to handle yourself like a professional, or are you going to handle yourself and be over the line? So I'm happy we covered that. The last topic.
Well, here's another thing too, that we should never lose our sense of humanity, and that's why no one needs to fight over anything. We don't need to fight over sports, people's opinions about sports, or people's opinions about politics. We can't lose our sense of humanity. We all have something in common as Americans and as human beings, and that is our humanity. And that's unless somebody has committed a dastardly crime, there's no reason to get violent or want to take something outside. You just discuss it, or you don't let it bother you. You have that choice too.
And lastly, I don't care if it's a male or a female. I don't care if it's an orange tree or an apple tree. I don't care if it's a orangutan or a hippopotamus. I don't care who my president is. I never woke up one day in my life, caring who the president of the United States was. Sometimes I vote for the winner. Sometimes I vote for the loser. I just don't want to wake up every day at 6:15 to watch the stock market on this computer where I have money invested and get my face ripped off like I have for the last 20 days, because I know how the markets work. I've been in the markets for over 35 years. And I know that if a market goes down 20% or 18% or 12%, it's got to go up 12% to get back to zero. You understand me? It's like when you lose 12 yards on a sack, you got to get 12 yards to get back to the line of scrimmage. And this week has been a bleeping disaster. And I don't care if it's tariffs. There's some serious conflicts around the world from Gaza to Ukraine. But there's a lot more bumpy, Tom, than Fox News told you it would be. You know, the team channel that I watch or the team channel other watches, a little bit different than what they told us a week before this all started. And now they're all sitting there changing their stories now. So it's been a bumpy ride.
Yeah, and it has been. And I think that they've always had that theory about Belgium. They don't have a president. They don't have a Valentine that they elect president. And I just think the more presidents play golf and the more they leave things alone, the more they don't meddle in their liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat, the less executive orders you sign, the less you try to remind us that you're there, it's better. And because we take a look at our gross national product year in and year out. We've had a couple of bumps in the road since they've had the S&P 500, but it goes up about 10% each year if you don't fuck with it. And I just think leave us all alone. And like you said, not caring about who's president is great because I feel the same way. No, if somebody gets elected and I'm disappointed, I go on with my life.
Yeah. Well, look, when
And we
FDR
have the
had
same goals.
when
Yeah,
FDR had to get with Churchill and try to win World War II, that was
right.
really big. When Kennedy was
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep, the Bay of Pigs at bay, and there were big
Mm-hmm.
things around the world happening, and presidents are very important. They're supposed to be
Oh, yeah.
diplomats, no matter who it is. So I'm not here to get political. I normally don't. But this was a financial volatile week. And the elderly in this country, and most people don't have stocks and bonds. Most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are living paycheck to paycheck. And what I've been saying to my guy like Mikey O and other people that are here, that when you take the wealthy and you crush them, and then you take the middle class and you crush them, then you take the people who are living paycheck to paycheck who don't have stocks and bonds and don't drive Teslas and Rolls Royces, and they're feeling the pain too, all for the betterment of what you think it's going to look like. It's very, very bumpy. Do I think we'll get through this? Of course. Do I think the markets will come back? Absolutely. I haven't sold the stock. I haven't sold one stock in probably the longest time I've ever held stocks, and that says a lot. But the problem is there's not a lot of liquidity out there. There's a lot of people building debt. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people
Yeah.
adding debt to their credit cards. There's a lot of people that live off their 401k after they get to 65, and they need that money for their rent and their payments and to go to lunch and to go on trips to see their grandkids. And they are getting their heads lopped off this week. And people are uncomfortable. And I've noticed it this week on top of all the sports talk shows I've done, all the events I'm doing this week. It is ugly.
Yeah, my doctor said everyone's coming in with high blood pressure. He's never seen anything like it. And
Really?
I'm just hoping it's barometric pressure and not politics.
Well, I tweeted out today, and I'm not very good on X, but I said today that everybody should either take the day off. Say that's my big inside joke. When the markets are down this bad, you're working for free. Whatever you think you're making, say you make a wage every day. Say you make
Right.
$200 a day or $700 a day. If you've lost 12,000 in a day, you're working for free. So you might as well go play golf or go to a bar. I love happy hour. I love happy
Right.
hour. Or you might as well go to the beach. I don't live by a beach here, but today I would have driven to the beach and parked my car and maybe had a sandwich by the beach. And when I've started breathing easier because I know it's all going to come back.
Well, one of the I have given you a lot of good advice over the years, and one of the bits of advice that you never follow is stop reading those comments.
Yeah.
But you love reading that New Yorker, and you fighting back those comments.
So I don't think we'll talk until after my Mexican Riviera. Oh, that's another one of the thing I want you to call bullshit or not. Am I going to the Mexican Riviera? Because I know the French have an actual Riviera. I know there are some Rivieras. Can you describe Cabo, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta as the Mexican Riviera?
It's hard to say. It's unbelievable the thousands and thousands of miles of beautiful beaches
Mm-hmm.
that Mexico has. And by the way, it's an enormous country. The Cabo is very slick. It looks a lot like Palm Springs, right? Because everything's new. And and everyone's speaking English. So there's no culture in Cabo. But some of those other places, you'll see some culture.
Last one. We always end the podcast. We tried to, if we remember, on what we're watching. We'll leave you with one thing. I'm watching Paradise on Hulu. Paradise is about a Secret Service agent who's protecting the president in a different world. It's America, but at a much vast different time. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. No spoilers here because I'm through episode 4, but really well done. So, and I'm also trying Pinky Blinders. I wasn't a Pinky Blinders guy, and I tried to do it with the captions on, not because I can't see or hear, but the accents are so thick. So I'm doing Paradise on Hulu, and I'm doing Pinky Blinders. Enjoying them both. Wife likes Paradise, not Pinky Blinders. So I'm kind of mixing and matching. What are you watching?
It's so funny because every once in a while I will come across a documentary like I did the Johnny Manziel documentary, which was not new, and I'll be blown away. And this was the one, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? The Bee Gees documentary, which is not new, but it's on HBO Max.
Great.
And I was glued to it. and they would be the biggest. They would be the biggest grossing concert. Had not, 3 or 4 of them are dead, which is tragic because they died not knowing the comeback they could have had. And but it's incredible. It's an incredible t- hot tub time machine.
Andy Gibb was so big and died so young. He was one of the few celebrities, not few, it happened to some, who actually died of cocaine abuse. Like some celebrities would do cocaine and then die of alcohol or other things. Andy Gibb did so much cocaine in such a short period of time that he killed himself, and he was the youngest of all the Gibb brothers.
Yeah, much younger than the rest of the Gibb brothers, and he had a whole separate career. And then when they combined them, he died right after that, and which is just the death involved with those 3 out of the 4 brothers it sucks because if you take a look at who the highest grossing concerts now, it's a lot of the 70s and 80s bands or performers, and Madonna and the Stones, etc. And they would.
Well, some of those acts that we're talking about from back in the day were so monstrous. Now it's Taylor Swift and a lot of the other bands that are coming up here. But I would highly recommend everything that we just were talking about. Go see Paradise. Definitely chime in and go if you saw Pinky Blinders. And as Looney's talking about the Bee Gees documentaries on any platform, or it's on, you said it was HBO Max?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh, incredible. And I did see an outstanding film. I think it was called Bankers. Have you seen it? It's on Apple Plus TV.
No.
Oh, my God. Apple Plus TV, Samuel L. Jackson and some other young actor. And a guy moved to LA, 40s and 50s, black guy moved to LA from Texas because he wanted to get into real estate, and he wasn't allowed to get into real estate in Texas. Came here, started buying apartment buildings, taking big risks, and it had a white friend who would be the front and be the face of the company, and then went back to his hometown and bought the bank where he used to sign shoes from. And you get to watch, and it's an incredible story. The first half I was far more comfortable. The second half drove up my blood pressure because at some point he got arrested for fraud because he bought a bank without telling people he was black. So that part was very uncomfortable. But it's really inspiring for anybody who has big goals and wants to go out and wants to change their careers, or is young and wants to kick ass in the world. You can do it if he can.
Well, I'm going to end the podcast how it started. I'm going to call Reggie Jackson, who called me Mr. October, and I'm wishing everybody the best. Please subscribe and share to the JT and Looney podcast. Real simple. It could be iHeart, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please subscribe and share the JT and Looney podcast.